The baby man.
This isn't my own encounter, but my mother's experience from when she was around 19 to 21 years old. My mother was almost a victim of a creepy rapist serial killer baby man who used an axe as his signature weapon. Background: she lived alone in a small unit in Richmond, Melbourne, and worked night shifts at a restaurant. Because she worked nights, she would sleep during the day and wake up around 2 to 3 p.m. She had a friend who visited her place regularly around the time she woke up, and they would eat a meal together and hang out for a couple hours. This was part of my mom's daily routine. Story: one night my mom was at the laundromat alone when she noticed a small-ish young European or Middle Eastern macho-looking man unloading a washing machine full of baby clothes. Like a huge amount of baby clothes. To my mom, the whole scene looked out of place. The guy didn't seem right. His demeanor didn't fit the load of baby clothing he was hauling into his basket. The man looked over at my mom, stared at her, but my mom mentioned that she didn't think too much about it at the time. She left shortly after with her load and drove back to her unit. A couple weeks later, Mom finished her shift at work and drove back to her place and went to bed. Woke up the next day in the afternoon and she had heard a knock at her front door. Assuming it was her friend, she started walking down the hallway where you could see a frosted window at the end. She saw a smallish figure, the exact size of her friend, and didn't have any thought it could be someone other than who she'd expected. My mom said that when she was halfway down the hallway, her body suddenly stopped in its tracks, and an immediate, overwhelming feeling of crippling fear came over her. She was frozen and staring at the shape of the figure outside for a minute when an unknown voice said something like,
"Hey, come open the door, it's me."
My mom slowly walked back down the hallway and into her bedroom. She waited in her room for the unknown visitor to leave, but he didn't. Every couple minutes he would say things like,
"Come on, let me in. I know you're in there. Why don't you open the door?"
According to my mom, she waited in her room for maybe 2 hours listening to the stranger calling out to her. She couldn't call anyone because the phone was in her kitchen and she didn't have the bravery to leave her room, as the unit was tiny and easily accessible. She was afraid the person outside would hear her and find a way to get inside. She mentioned that after waiting for so long, she couldn't handle the cold temperature of her room, as she was barely wearing anything. Note, she had only been sleeping beforehand. She finally got the guts to jump up and bolt from her room to the kitchen, which had a back door. She ran out the back door and down the street behind her unit. She had a neighbor who she was friends with and went straight to their place. She explained what happened, and they both looked out this person's window, which had a view of my mom's unit since their street was a U-shape. They could see the stranger still standing at the front door of my mom's house. It was the same man from the laundromat a few weeks earlier. They called the police, but the man left before anyone came. After the incident, my mom stayed at her parents' house for a few days. Soon she felt that she was safe to go live in her own unit again. A couple weeks after moving back to her unit, she begins receiving notes under her door and on her front steps. According to my mom, the letters had strange things written on them. She never told me what was written, but she mentioned that sentences and words were extremely amateur, as if they were written by a 6-year-old. Letters were squiggly, written back to front and arranged in strange sequences. My mom would give the notes into the police station, and they weren't treated as much of a threat. This continued for maybe a few weeks or a month. One day, my mom woke up in the afternoon after a previous night shift. It was just another regular day, but she felt that she needed to go and spend a night at her parents' house. She left, spent the night, and got a call the next day to find that the strange man from the first incident had returned to her unit around the same time she left, made his way to the back of her unit with an axe, and immediately started axing down her back door like a madman. He was seen by a neighbor who called the police. However, the man left before the police came. Anyway, it turned out that the man's description partnered with the strange notes my mom was receiving, fit the policeman's belief that the man was a suspect of the rape and murder of a number of girls in Melbourne from the 70s onwards. He wasn't caught, and I don't know if he ever was. He's most likely still out there. I've found a site that might contain possible murders by the baby man. I also wonder if a few of the men around the ages of 56 or over with pedophilia or murder crimes on this site could possibly be the baby man.